Hello and welcome to Visibility into Applications, Workloads, and Traffic. Today's webinar is sponsored by Gigamon and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we will provide further technical assistance. Now, next, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to two PDFs from Gigamon. One is an ebook about what deep observability means. You're going to be hearing a lot about deep observability, and it's a great takeaway there. The other is today's slide deck. Now, also in the handout section, you can find a link to the Gorilla Guide Book Club where you can get access to Actual Tech Media's great printed resources on technology topics, as well as a link to the ATM Event Center, which has our calendar of upcoming events. So I encourage you to check out those resources now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Third, at the end of this webinar event, we'll be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Now, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. And to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. After the event is over, we'll look through all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. And with that, let's get to today's timely discussion. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Martyn Crew, who's Senior Director for Solutions and Partner Technologies at Gigamon, and we have Jim Mandelbaum, who's Cloud Architect and Field CTO for Gigamon. So I'm going to turn things over to Martyn to get us started.
Hello, everybody. Martyn Crew from Gigamon here. I'm joined by my colleague, Jim Mandelbaum, who I'll introduce in a minute. And we're going to talk to you all about applications visibility. And more than just applications visibility, we're going to talk about workload visibility and also visibility into the traffic that your applications and workloads deliver. Little something that Jim and I call the secret life of your network, because this really reveals what's going on the network. And as we often say at Gigamon, the network and the packets that move across the network really are the single source of truth about what's happening. So as I said, my name is Martyn Crew. I run solutions marketing for Gigamon. And before we start with a quick overview, I want to introduce Jim Mandelbaum, our field CTO.
Hi, everybody. Jim Mandelbaum, field CTO. Been with Gigamon for over 4 years now. Prior to that, I was field CTO at RSA.
Great. All right, Jim, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So the structure of the webinar today, I'm going to spend about 15 minutes giving you a sort of an overview into who Gigamon is, just a one-slide overview. No one need get bored. And then we'll get into this issue of how do you get visibility into the applications, the workloads, and the traffic that they generate. That'll take about 15 minutes. And then we're going to hand over to Jim, and he's going to take us through worked examples. As he said, he said he's been here 4 years, I've been here 4 years as well. And in that time, he and I have done a lot of work in this space to help our customers understand exactly what's happening on the network, to get visibility into it, to filter it, and really manipulate the data so that you're managing that data to the in the absolute most efficient way. So that's going to be the bulk of what we talk about. We do want your questions, so please send questions into us. And at the end of the formal session, Jim and I will do a Q&A, and we'll make sure we cover your issues. So with that, let's get started. So a real quick one-slide overview of who Gigamon is for those of you not familiar with us. As a company, we've been around about 15 years. For many of those years, we've been very focused on what was called the network visibility space, which was using next-gen packet brokers to give visibility to people on-prem and in virtual environments, private cloud networks, into exactly what was happening on the network. We were, for many years, the #1 vendor in that space. But now with public cloud, we've really pivoted into what's called the deep observability space, which is really an extension to that visibility idea. So it combines a top-down view of what's happening on the network through the cloud observability traits, the MELT traits, as we call them, metrics, events, logs, and traces, with Gigamon's traditional bottom-up view of what's happening on the network from the packet and session perspective. As an organization, a bit about our size and shape, we have about 4,000 customers worldwide. Very significantly, these are some of the largest, most demanding IT organizations there are. So 83 of the Fortune 100, many of the top global banks, top mobile operators, and particularly for folks in North America, all of the top 10 US federal agencies. The product that you're going to see today is built on a base of 140 different patents, and that's a number that's expanding all the time. And very significantly and very importantly for us, we have a very strong customer satisfaction rating, 4.7 out of a possible 5. And that's critical because beyond being customers, the companies that use Gigamon really are our partners. And so we put a lot of time into making sure that they're getting the full value from our software. So speaking of our software, let's talk a little bit about what we do. So I mentioned earlier on that we provide sort of an amalgam of a top-down and bottom-up view of what's happening on the network to give you a complete view into all the traffic, the data in motion, if you will, that's moving across all the environments highlighted at the bottom of the screen. And that data is moving between workloads and applications, for example, workloads that might be running in the data center, might be running in VMware, Nutanix, or these days, on an IaaS-based platform. Doesn't matter whether it's AWS, whether it's Azure, GCP, OpenStack. Did I miss anything there? Google Cloud, and Oracle Cloud as well. So it really doesn't matter where the application or the workload is hosted. We can access that traffic. We then broker it. So we understand the traffic. We know what tools need to see it. We can transform it into the formats most applicable to those tools. And that's going to be a large part of what Jim and I talk about today. And then we can enrich it. We can wrap around the basic data, the metadata that gives additional meaning to that. So we call our solution a deep observability pipeline. And I hope from my previous description, it's obvious why. And we're providing this packet level visibility into everything that's happening across the network. And we truly are a pipeline. We sit between the workloads and the tools. So that's a little bit about the solution and why we describe it as such. In terms of our products, so we've got the tapping capability, we've got the GigaView capability, as we call it, which is our appliance or cloud-based software. And Jim will be spending a lot of time looking at the Gigamon Fabric Manager, which is a part of that. And then we also have the GigaSmart software. And this is the software that really brings the intelligence to the data in motion on the network. And that's a large part of what we're going to do today. In fact, it's where I'm going to start now. So within the Gigamon Fabric Manager, which is the overall shell in which everything that Gigamon produces exists, we have a suite of software called GigaSmart. And the GigaSmart raison d'etre is to minimize the irrelevant traffic that's sent to tools. So those of you in the NetOps or SecOps business, you know that when you look at the tools that are consuming data to either secure or troubleshoot or ensure performance on the network, one of the problems with those tools is they often get way too much information. They get information that's not relevant to their needs. They get it in formats that there's a better way to do it. So with GigaSmart, what we're doing is making sure that we're delivering information to the tools in the format that they need it, in the level of detail that they need it, without compromising the fidelity of that data. So if you want raw packets, you can have raw packets. If you want flows, you can have flows. If you want metadata, you can have metadata. Or it needn't be an either or. You can have a combination that's right for your particular tool, your particular use case. So typically what we see when we work with customers is we go into their environments, we start to look at what's happening, and we see there's a huge amount of what we can call noise. So the noise is all the data in motion that's moving across the network that's often uncritically being fed to all the different tools. Feeding tools too much or the wrong type of data leads to massive inefficiencies. It could be as simple as drop packets. It could also be the tool shutting down because they've got too much information. So we have a set of capabilities that let you focus in on exactly what information needs to go to what tools. And as I've said, this is our GigaSmart suite. So I'm going to highlight 4 functions. And these 4 functions used in combination generally end up with a reduction of traffic to tools of about 78–80%. So let's see what they are. So first off, we have flow mapping. So flow mapping takes information from a particular source, particular port, and it moves it only to the tool that needs it. So typically when we look at network traffic, that can reduce the overall traffic on the network by 20–30%. We also have a deduplication capability. So those of you managing complex networks know that typically you're tapping the same information on the network from a number of different sources. It's not something you deliberately try to do. It's something that's very difficult not to do. So it's a reality of life that for most organizations, they have a significant amount of duplicate packets traversing the network at any point in time. From our studies, we've seen this be as high as 90% of all the traffic. A more normal range is 35–60% of the traffic. With our deduplication capability, we can eliminate that traffic, make sure there's only one copy of the packet that's going to those tools. And again, that can affect a massive reduction in the amount of traffic going to those tools. We're not going to focus on deduplication today. We can show it as part of one of the functions within FM, but it's not going to be a major part of what we speak about. A major part of what we speak about is going to be this function, application filtering. So as we all know, these days, most organizations have moved from a very network-centric view of what's happening in the world to a very application-based view. This has really been an acceleration occurring as part of the move to the public cloud, which is very much an application-centric network. Within the Gigamon suite, we have a number of products that collectively we call the Gigamon Application Intelligence Suite. And one of them is application filtering. So we can detect the signatures of 3,500 of the most common applications that are used out there. Could be streaming applications, could be communication applications, business applications. We can also detect the signatures of custom applications that you've developed. Or if we can't get to the application level, we can identify the protocols that are being used. Being able to identify all these applications means that we can say, all right, I know that for my streaming applications, I need to make sure that the data actually is originating from the streaming application, but I don't then need to see that data in detail. Once I know what it is, I don't need to see it. It doesn't need to go to my tools, doesn't need to be stored for compliance purposes, for example. This can reduce traffic to tools by about 50%. And in some cases, we've seen situations where it's not only reducing traffic to tools, it's reducing the amount of traffic that's held in data retention stores. And it often helps reduce that amount of data so that organizations can have a full 30 or 60 days of data in the compliance store, rather than maybe 7 to 10 days that they're having before you use a capability like application filtering. I gave an example there of streaming data and the way that we would cut off the flow after we've made sure we know where the data is coming from and where it needs to go to is using our advanced flow slicing capability. And this is one of the most effective ways to reduce the amount of traffic that's going to tools. And typically, what we can say is that after X number of packets that have established the identity of the flow, you can cut off everything else. And that can reduce traffic to tools by 60%. So these are just 4 different ways that we can do this. And as I say, in aggregate, these usually end up with about a 78–80% reduction of traffic to tools on the network. So I mentioned there that these belong to a suite of products that we call the Application Intelligence Suite. And it's really aimed at data optimization, as I've described, using the application filtering capability. But it's also extended into 2 other areas. One is to extract application metadata. So in the good old days, Gigamon was very much focused at the packet level. But exactly 4 years ago, in fact, Cisco Live 2019, we introduced the application metadata capability. This gives us visibility from layer 2 to layer 7 on the network. So we not only know the applications, as I described earlier on, the 3,500 standard applications and the custom and protocols on top. We not only know what they are, but we can actually see the attributes of many of those applications and decide which of those we need to use for our traffic optimization and filtering processes. And a little later on, Jim's going to show you how we would use that to help manage traffic on the network. The final capability here, Application Connect, we're not going to be showing today, but this is kind of the basis of our Deep Observability Pipeline idea. So one of the critical things with Deep Observability is how are you actually going to show the information about what's happening on the network. Many of you will be aware we'll already be using observability tools, maybe New Relic, Dynatrace, Datadog, Sumo. There's a whole raft of different tools out there. An Application Connect is the way that we extract, or not that we extract, that we transfer the metadata that we've extracted from the application layer to those various tools. So again, this is a bit of a sort of internal plumbing. It's not particularly exciting to show you, but it is powerful. And it's something that if you are using observability tools for dashboarding and things like that, and you want to extend the visibility the application that the observability has from application performance monitoring into areas like security that Jim will show you later on, get in touch with us and ask to see this, because it's a very powerful capability, but not one that I think fits in today's session. So those are the 3 different elements of the Application Intelligence Suite. So Jim's going to show you a live demo in a couple of minutes, but just to sort of give you some highlights. So the different modules within Application Intelligence, we have Application Visualization that gives you, as the name suggests, a visualization of what are the applications running on the network. The screenshot we've got here shows the top 10 applications. It shows the total traffic. And then on the right side of the screen, it shows you a listing of all of the applications. Using the application filtering, we can then go deep, as Jim will show you, choose some of those applications and create rules as to how the data that they generate is to be handled and which tools need to see it. And that is the nature of the application filtering intelligence. So again, it's setting up essentially flow map rules based on the applications that are on the network and deciding what information needs to be forwarded to what tools, what can be dropped. So some examples. So we've talked about this idea of extracting metadata from applications and then using it to enrich the capability of SIM and observability tools. And what this will do is give them the capability to identify very specifically things like suspicious network activity. It'll show weak ciphers, expired ciphers, expiring ciphers, things that could actually bring the network, or at least an application on the network, to a screeching halt if they're not properly managed. It can show rogue servers and unauthorized applications on the network. And as much as we'd like to think we all run a nice, tidy, clean ship, you know, the reality is that most organizations have unauthorized apps and rogue servers on the network doing things like crypto mining, enabling people to host and play games, all kinds of stuff that you really do not want on the network. And then most importantly, it can identify critical things like suspicious user activity that might lead to data exfiltration, for example, through DNS tunneling. So there's a huge amount of richness that we can deliver using the application intelligence suite. And I think it's now time, Jim, that I stop talking and hand it over to you and let you take people into the real world and see exactly how we can help them.
Well, it's
so I'm going to
about
stop my share.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard me. I said, well, it's about time.
It is. All right. Well, I
So
am
go
going
ahead
to
and
get out
stop
of here.
sharing, and I'm going to really quickly. We did a study. We did a double-blind study where we went out and we talked to a lot of cloud folks, and we kind of asked them what their thoughts are on different features and capabilities. And the first one was you talked about, you brushed on it, which was, how do you look at your network security data? How do you look at the secure stuff, the secured traffic? And a lot of them said, well, we just look at the headers and, we look at the source and destination. And we said, well, what about things like weak ciphers? What about, how do you manage SSL certificates in the cloud or in a multi-cloud hybrid environment? And they got a lot of shrugs. So what we can do, just to give you a quick high level, is we can actually look at that traffic. We don't even have to actually decrypt it. What we're looking at is the entire session. Everything we're doing at this point is sessionizing the entire traffic and then giving you a lot of information. So we can look and find you the certificate. So we can look at self-signed certs. We can look at the expirations of the certs. Are they already expired? Are they expiring soon? These are the dashboards that Martyn was talking about. We can, whatever your tool is, this one here, New Relic, we work with all the different partners, Datadog, Riverbed. We have dashboards for this kind of stuff. And what we can look at is understanding what's happening in your network in real time. So it isn't a tool to manage your SSL certs. It's a tool to tell you what's really happening. So as some of that rogue traffic happens, it used to be shadow IT. I was guilty. The guy that put a server under his desk and, what he needed to do for the department. Now it's being done in the cloud. So how do you find that stuff? How do you look for it? How do you make sure that you're in compliance? This is one way you can do it. Another way that we got from these conversations was understanding that 443 traffic is just not all web traffic. How do you know the difference between 443 that is either SSH or RDP? And how do you know if in DNS, for example, in port 53, that it's actually DNS traffic and not an exfil? And so what we can do is take a look at the traffic on these different ports into these dashboards, and you hope that everything just matches and everything's good and it is web traffic. But if it's not web traffic, we populate the dashboards to show you, for example, in port 443, is it SSH? Is it RDP? Is it another application using those ports? So it really does resonate, and it's really easy to do. So before I do more slide decks, let's dive into the real stuff. Let me drag this over. Share. All right. So Fabric Manager, as Martyn said, I'm going to spend a lot of time in here. Fabric Manager is, I hate the word single pane of glass, but it is our single pane orchestration tool. And what this is this is the management screen, and we manage all of our physical and virtual in one place, because we all know that nobody lives either all physical or all virtual. I have spoken to people that are all virtual. That's a rare thing. Sorry, got something in my eye. That's a rare thing to happen nowadays. Most people live in a hybrid world where I have some on-prem, some maybe, when we talk cloud, understand cloud doesn't have to be public cloud. It could be private cloud. So VMware, Nutanix, OpenStack, that's still cloud. Anything that's virtual. So, and of course, AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, Alibaba, whatever, those are public cloud. But to us, cloud is cloud. We manage it all from the same place. So let me give you a quick tour here, and then we're going to dive in. We manage our connections, which we call our inventory. And you can see all the virtual environments, but you'll also see what we call our universal container tab. So everything we're doing here doesn't have to only be in that virtual space that you're used to thinking about, but what about the stuff that's transient? What about that stuff that in the containers, Kubernetes environments that up and running for a matter of a couple seconds, a couple minutes, whatever, and it's gone? How do I ensure visibility into that? And that's what we're talking about. That deep observability gets you into that container that was spun up in a pod that may be only running to do a specific request, and then it's gone. We need to know what happened. We need to understand what it did. We need to understand who it was talking to. That doesn't change whether I'm talking an ESX host, an Azure host, or a Kubernetes pod. Nothing there has changed. When we look at the traffic, we've got things called orchestrated flows. Those are the things that Martyn was talking about, where we create and grab the traffic, relevant traffic to the tool. And then, of course, we've got this thing called application intelligence. Now, application intelligence, sorry, let me move some of the Zoom stuff out of my screen. Application intelligence, I'm only looking at the last hour. Let's give ourselves a little more data. Application intelligence, first off, tells me the top 10 applications that it's seeing in my network. It shows me traffic over time, but it also shows me every single application that it sees in this environment. It's always fun to do this. This is running in my home lab. And so I also have a public Wi-Fi that I share to my neighbors. Otherwise, I wouldn't have some really fun stuff. You never know what you're going to find in here. I love it. And we're going to sessionize this, as I said, all the way to layer 7. So we work at layer 2, layer 3, and 4, all the way up to 7. But the idea is we want to know what applications it's running. So one of the things that we commonly get is this, well, we wrote our own applications. We have homegrown applications. How do I deal with that? So before I go into the demo real quick, I do want to let you know that we have the ability to build out user-defined applications. So if I have an application, I can come through here, give it a name, give it the priority that I'm looking for in my rule set, but I can come over here and I can pick any type of protocol that I want this to be based on. So for example, if I choose SSL, the attributes I get is going to be domain name or alt names. But if I come over here and look for SIP traffic, it's going to be based on user agent. If I want to look at things like I want to just go raw TCP, there are different kinds of things I can look at to create filters. And so I can create my own custom applications so that when I go into this application intelligence, I have the applications that are written for me included in these attributes. So this is very important because those unknown things are the ones that get us, right? Now we're going to get thousands of applications that we're going to see. You can see, we know what Facebook is. We know what private relays are, Apple TV Plus, Reddit, Zoom. We can take and sessionize these and figure out what they are. We're not as concerned about source and destination other than for reporting purposes, but to find the application, we know what it is. So once we decide what we want, so let's say I want to grab my DNS traffic. So I got my DNS traffic. Why not? I'll grab my DHCP traffic. And while I'm at it, why don't I just go ahead and say, I want my web traffic too. So let me go HTTP. Let's grab this traffic as well. And I want to go ahead and send that traffic to a tool. So when I go into application filtering, these are the applications I've grabbed. I can come over here and say, here's another destination and select the predefined tool. So in my case, I've got a bunch of tools and I'm going to say, well, I want to send it to, let's just go ExtraHop. Now, just so you understand this is not a plug for ExtraHop. This is the fact that we work with all the tool vendors. We're very vendor agnostic. It's just, I happen to have one of their sensors running. But again, I also have other companies' sensors running as well. So if I want to grab these applications, I just select them and add them. You'll see that I'm now sending the traffic to those traffic to the tool. Now, if I also wanted to go and manually select things, let's say I'm going to say, I want to also see, and I'm going to build a dashboard in ExtraHop or whatever my tool is. I want to look for crypto mining. Well, I don't have any crypto mining showing up today in my filtering, but that's okay. I can come over here, go into the app editor, and I can say, I want to look for, I don't know, let's go for Monero. So we're seeing a lot of Monero out there. So I want to add Monero to the list of applications. I also want to look for Bitcoin. So I'm going to grab Bitcoin. And now they are added. So by doing that, I very quickly added those applications to what I want. But what if I want to go out, as Martyn said, and I start creating these rules, I can create rules to add or drop applications. So if I go and grab an actual suite, so if I come over here and grab a suite, and let's say I'm looking for peer-to-peer, right? So if I come over here and look for peer-to-peer communications, let's scroll it down, there's peer-to-peer. That's an entire suite of applications. And so what's going to happen is right now I have 7 applications that I'm looking for. As soon as I grab all those peer-to-peers, that becomes 62. And so if you look, there's a lot of different applications. BitTorrent, I've never heard of some of these. And Direct Connect. Maybe there's some stuff in here that I really don't care about. So maybe let's just kind of scroll down and look at all these different ones. It automatically knows what's in it. But maybe BitTorrent is something I don't want to look at because we use BitTorrent maybe to download our repositories, whatever, and I don't really worry about BitTorrent. I can add this, and I can come over into the drop and create a drop that says, but I want to drop BitTorrent. And figures, it's probably got a dash. Nope. Always in a live demo. Oh, well, that's okay. I'm going to cancel out of that. But if you take a look at the different applications, I can just very easily say, I don't want BitTorrent there and just remove it. That was easier. But the idea here is you can have a suite and you can drop specific applications out of the suite. And then all you do is click save and you're done. So that's all it takes to create applications connections. I can add different tooling because one of the things we talked about was we can say that we want to add the appropriate traffic to the appropriate tool. So for example, I'm looking at finding maybe in a different sensor, I'm only looking to pass web traffic. So maybe if I come over here and say, I only want to pass the web traffic and add those to it, you'll see I've got 3 applications going to that tool. So what you can do is send the right traffic to the right tool, build these dashboards with specific types of traffic. So if I'm looking for crypto mining, I can have a dashboard and hopefully it's always 0, but we can find it for you when it does happen in real time. Now, one of the other things we talked about, which tends to be a very large savings on data, is data deduplication. And turning on data deduplication is nothing more than a slider switch. There, data deduplication is turned on. So all of the applications I'm passing, anytime it sees the traffic coming in from different sources, because I'm tapping virtual and physical, it may cross both realms. I don't want to see multiple flags or multiple processes within my tool. As he said, that a lot of times we can't avoid it, especially when we're looking at a hybrid environment. It's a very high probability we're going to see it 2, 3, 4 times. And that means that if my tool saw it, it would have to process it 2, 3, 4 times or alert 2, 3, 4 times. I don't want that. I want it just one time, and I'm going to decrease that traffic. So data deduplication, they say on average, you'll see marketing say 50%. I'm going to say reality, 30 to 35% immediately when I hit that slider switch. Now, the last thing that I want to go into is I want to go into something called application metadata. That was the big one that Martyn was talking about. So if I come in, I'm going to add a tool, and I'm going to leave that blank for a second, and we're just going to kind of talk about the applications on the side. If you look at this, every single application may have certain attributes. Some types of traffic, because it's encrypted, may not be able to get the attributes. Some do, depending upon what it is. DNS, for example, has a lot. What is that? 61? I can't even read my own screen. 61 different attributes of metadata that we can grab, and we can say, I want to know what the host was. I want to know what the host address was. I want a reverse address on that host. Very simple stuff. You can come in. Here was the query. Here was the reply code. You can go through and select what matters to you and send it off to the tool. And you'll see that what's in this one for DNS is going to be different than what's in DHCP. DHCP is going to have, here's the lease time, right? When did it get it? Here is going to be the domain name, the DNS server that responded. So I can look for maybe rogue DNS even within my DHCP. There's a lot of things I can do with this metadata, building out those dashboards. And then the other thing that's really cool is that when you send it to the tool, you have a lot of controls on the type of traffic. Am I sending it through Ceph? Am I using traditional NetFlow? How often am I going to send it? Where am I going to send it? Now, one of the things that we've done is, depending upon your use case, we've created some templates for you that says, well, here I'm looking for anomalous traffic, or I'm looking for logging, M213 logging. I'm looking at a security posture, rogue activity. So if I click rogue activity, it's going to go and populate the advanced settings down here that match what would be a rogue activity template, which is some of the templates we pre-build for a lot of these vendors. So that's the great thing about it is you don't have to do a lot of the hard work. In this case, all I would do is give it a tool name, choose the IP interface and the IP address, and click save, and it's done. And so as I said, we've built the templates for you for some of the common tools that are going to use it, whether we're looking at troubleshooting. How about unmanaged assets? This is another one that's really important that people don't think about. If I want to grab, let's say, all traffic and filter out some things like backup data or DRF data motions in VMware, a lot of stuff that have no value. If I want to go in, for example, and go back into the applications and say, look, when we talk about dropping applications, I probably would come in here and I would say, I really don't want any Netflix traffic, right? So Netflix video. Now, Netflix is the web page stuff, but this video is the streaming. Maybe I do want to see the requests, but the video itself, I don't want. Maybe I don't want, let's do Amazon video. Come down a little bit. Amazon video. So I don't want Amazon video. And the reason for that is these are a lot of high volume, low value. We have to, there's some things in the world we kind of have to assume. We have to assume that Netflix and Amazon are passing good traffic, because trying to record all the videos and music and everything that people are doing is a complete waste of your storage and your compute. We have to assume that they're scanning and being scanned continually. So let them deal with their stuff. We'll deal with our realm. And the idea is I could reduce the amount of traffic going to these tools significantly. And then the metadata created across these tools. And once we've done that, it's automatic. Going back in and changing it is very, very simple. So when we talk about deep observability, it's more than just saying, I'm going to grab all the packets and send it. It's about, I'm going to grab the packets. I'm going to transform those packets into a sessionized view. And then I'm going to let you create additional attributes. Maybe you just want the flow, but maybe you want to know more details to try to solve some of these things. So Martyn, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to bring you back. Let me stop sharing my screen. And I know we have some questions out there because I've seen these little things pop up, but I'm not reading them. So maybe we can dig into those.
Yeah, let's do that. Jim, that was great. I know we've been doing this for 4 years, but it's such a powerful capability that it's really good to see it, and to see it demonstrated in detail is always.
I love that you brought up Cisco Live 2019, because I was really new to the company back then, and I was asked. I was walked by the booth and I was sucked in and said, "Hey Jim, can you talk about this capability?" It was brand new, and I was learning on the fly, and I loved it because my memory. I know we're going off topic. My memory of that night was that first night was the concert, and the concert at Cisco Live was Weezer and the Foo Fighters. And it was a great concert. If you remember, it's talking about memories. But on that show floor, what was interesting is when we showed what we were doing, one question got asked over and over again is, well, don't I already have this in my Palo? Don't I already have this in my Cisco gear? And I said, well, you do have some of it. So, 300 to 500 different applications, but they're looking at source port and destination typically. What we're looking at is the entire session. We're hashing the session so that's how we know, is it really web traffic or is it SSH or RDP that's going through that port? And so what I loved was 4 years ago, people were doing this, but again, this is different than what you're doing in your firewalls. This is not wasting expensive compute time in your firewall to determine something that's not really getting you what you need. So I that's the deep part of it, right? Observability is one part of it. Deep means that it's actually what it says it is. And that's hard to do in today's world, especially in a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud environment. I know
Yeah,
I
it
said I was going to
is.
shut up, but
Yeah, no. I think you're exactly right there. I mean, this is something that's true of all Gigamon capabilities, really, not just the application intelligence, that it's the breadth of what we do in terms of it's all of the environments that make up the hybrid or hybrid multi-cloud that IT operates in these days. And it's the depth, it's the fact we can go all the way from the application layer down to the packet layer. So many of these capabilities sound like things people have already got, but when you actually look at the difference between what's built in, as you said, to maybe a firewall in terms of identifying a handful of common apps to the type of thing that we've got, there's a lot more power there. So you brought up a good question, but Laurie, our moderator for today, I know we've got 4 or 5 other really interesting questions. So do you want to join us and shoot one of those questions over to Jim and myself?
Sure. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Martin. I'm Laurie Allen, and I am the program manager for Gigamon's Video Center of Excellence. And so I'm here today, and I've been watching great questions come through for you both. And so the first one that I see is, I can see what's on my network from my logs. Why is this any better?
wow.
Jim,
Yeah,
for you.
this is my bread and butter. That's a common question, and whoever asked it, thank you. So first things I want to say is logs are yesterday. Now we need logs so we can go back and look at yesterday. So I'm not saying get rid of logs, keep logs, but we want to really understand what's happening on our network in real time. So the ultimate source of truth is packets. We've been saying that when I was at RSA, prior to that, it was always the ultimate source of truth is the data in motion on our network. So I want to know what's really happening on my network in real time. I want to be proactive, not reactive. The other side of this is not everything are in the logs. If I look at typical log data, I'm getting logs from managed services. I'm getting logs from stuff I control. But what about IoT devices? What about stuff that is running, if it's virtual, that you don't have root access because it's a service that you're paying for, an appliance? What about physical OT and IoT and medical IoT devices? You're not going to get logs for those. And I love when we talk to the medical space where they've got thousands and thousands of infusion pumps and other devices that they're on their network, but they don't have any smarts. The logs they get aren't from those devices themselves. We want to see those devices, especially in medical or manufacturing, because I want to know if I've got an IoT device on my network, I want to know it's there, number one. I want to know what version of an operating system it's running. I want to know, is that version vulnerable? I want to know, is it talking to the appropriate controller? Are they talking to each other? I can't see that with logs. If I look at the packets, I can get a true picture of what's happening. So if somebody comes in and says, okay, we've got a vulnerable device, I can very quickly go into our filtering rule and say, I want to grab everything that matches this device and send it immediately to this destination, and I can find those tools, those devices immediately. You can't do that with logs. And I know I harp on logs a lot, but so many people in the cloud say, well, I've got CloudWatch, I've got whatever, I'm not going to pick on any one vendor, but I've got the logs. And I say, yeah, and when did that happen? You know, did somebody go and spin up crypto, which you probably won't find in the log, but did somebody do it? When did they do it? You probably find out when the bill arrives and you've got a $50,000 bill. And I'm not making that up. We've heard it directly from clients that they only found out about it when their bill went up. And unfortunately, the cloud providers, they don't care. They provide a service and you use the service. So sorry, I didn't mean to harp. It's just
that's great. No, look, I mean, we could talk logs all day long. I mean, one of the things that I see, particularly when working with people who are looking at zero trust based environments, is they say, hey, look, we got the logs. Well, guess what? Logs are not immutable. Logs can be suppressed. It's one of the most common things, as we all know, that when developers want stuff to run faster, they take down the level of logging. So there's that. There's also the fact that logs can be accessed and can be tampered with or deleted. So there's a lot of issues around logs that I think mean that whilst logs remain very important, they're part of the equation. They're not an answer in itself. So it's the logs plus the packet level that we've been discussing today that I think organizations really need to be sure that they can be secure. So Laurie, enough of logs. Well, what's our next question?
The next question comes from Richard, and we've had instances of people running crypto mining and gaming on our network. Would this have helped us identify and stop that sort of activity?
Yeah, exactly what I showed you earlier. When we go in, you can go in and create rules that says these are the types of applications that I'm looking for. And again, you don't have, you can go in and say that I'm looking for any specific, like I'm looking for Steam, I'm looking for whatever the game vendor is. I'm looking for these by the application, but you can also go by category. And you can send that category to a tool and you can have a dashboard that's looking for that. And if it ever populates, then you can go find out who was doing it in real time. So the idea here is you don't have to have the traffic currently to be watching for it. We can create proactive rules that populates dashboards with all zeros that when somebody spins something up, that it automatically populates. And it's actually very easy to test in your environment, right? You set it up, you set up the tool, you set up the dashboard, and then somewhere on your network, you go and just do a test. You can play a replay PCAP, or you can actually spin up a game or service, whatever it is you're looking for, and watch it populate the dashboard as a test. And you can say, okay, yes, it's working. So what happens is you can have a single dashboard of stuff that this is all the stuff we're looking for on our network: crypto mining, gaming. Maybe we have a policy that says, during the World Cup, it was crazy how much video streaming was going on. I know Martyn's probably guilty of it. I was. And so, it's maybe you want to have a policy. You can't do that on our network. It's just too much. And so anything that's going to be of the video streaming, I want to know who did it so I can walk over and tap them on the shoulder and go, hey, stop it. Hopefully it's just somebody not knowing, but you also want to make sure it's not malicious. That, we heard from Google where they did a study, and everybody's got a different study, but Google's is the shortest, that upon compromise of a cloud infrastructure, Google said that under 22 seconds, that person or entity started crypto mining. 22 seconds into their environment, and they were spinning up crypto mining. So I don't want to know 2 days from now, I want to know in 22 seconds. And the 22 seconds was crazy to me, but Microsoft said it was 39. So I kind of have to believe them. So yeah, I want to be proactive on this stuff and not reactive. And this is a way you can do it.
Yeah, I was going to mention that Google study, but thanks for saving my breath there, Jim.
Sorry.
All right, Laurie, another question, please.
Yes, here's a good one. Using metadata sounds interesting, but is there an overhead to doing this?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jim. I'll let you add the detail, but as always with most advanced capabilities, there is the possibility of some kind of overhead. So, Jim, what are we actually seeing in the real world with customers on this?
Yeah, so that is a question that comes up often. Am I going to increase my spend? What's it going to do to me? So understand that the generation of metadata in the typical use cases, and we have standard use cases, a couple of them I talked about. In a typical use case, it's a 1 to 100 ratio. So so for every 100 megs, it's 1 meg. So it's actually quite small. You're looking at very small amounts of data. You're not talking about a lot of increase in your usage. So if you're looking at like a Splunk or QRadar or something like that, where you're ingesting that metadata into your data source, into your SIEM, you're looking at a very, very small amount of incremental data with very high value. So if the cost is a factor, you have to look at the value to cost. It's actually quite high on the value. But yes, there is going to be a small amount. And of course, if you're looking, one of the other things we didn't talk about is he mentioned it, which is flow. We can generate complete flow logs on everything we see. So if you're looking for flow data, we can generate 100% flow data on everything we see. You can go into your switches and your routers and everything, turn off NetFlow, and we can generate it instead. And what that means is that not only can we see 100% NetFlow of the network, you can be very selective in where you see the flow from. And so you can come in real time, say, I want to see flow data between here and here, and you can turn that on, which means that you don't have to get 100% of it. You can get what you need when you're working on it. So if I'm looking at performance, I can go flow data in this range, so I can look at my application or network performance. So I can grab these specific apps with this flow and the apps and understand, is it my network that's slowing down my application, or is it the application itself? So there's a lot of things you get with this from the value perspective, looping it back in. So the ratio is quite small, the amount of data per packet, but yes, there is going to be some additional ingestion.
Yeah, and let me add something to that. So, I mean, this is something that we are very mindful of, and we've developed a suite of tools that we use internally in our solutions team and our professional services team, that with your permission, we can put on your networks and we can actually see the data that's there, and we can come up with projections and models of how much data to tools can be saved, how many future tools purchases can maybe be postponed, deferred, to preserve this year's budget. And we can come up with the calculations that will show in terms of additional compute burden on the server and reduced flow across the network, what the pros and cons of this will be. So if this is something that you are interested in, by all means, reach out to us, because we can get involved and do a quick study, probably a half-day study, that's going to give you a really good idea of what the potential savings and also the potential overhead is going to be with this. All right, Laurie, we've got time for a couple more probably. What have we got next?
Yeah, we have a few more here. Does this only work in the cloud or on-prem as well?
Let me answer that one, Jim, save your brain power. Yeah, this works across all of the platforms that we support. This is something that we've really spent a lot of time on over the last 6 years, which is making sure that our software is fully interoperable across all the different environments. So whether you're an existing customer running on our appliances in a data center environment, whether you've moved, as most people have, a lot of workloads to the virtual world, whether you're in a public cloud, or most likely, as Jim said, in a mix of all of those, same software across all those environments with full interoperability.
Yeah, one thing that I always like to stress is when we live in multiple environments, right? So let's say a typical environment I run into is they've got something on-prem. So let's say VMware on-prem, and they're in AWS and a little bit in Google. You know, how do I deal with something across all of these environments? I have to relearn every environment. And what we're trying to say is, no, you don't. You can use our single cloud suite and use it across all the environments. So once I've learned how to use it in one, I know how to use it in all of them. And so I always say, you know, talk to your vendors. Again, we're vendor agnostic. So talk to your vendors and say, well, Gigamon is getting us the traffic in all of these environments. How can you consume them in all the traffic in all those environments, and give me a cohesive view of all of my traffic? So that's what we're trying to do here, is give you the ability to live in a hybrid multi-cloud environment, use the same tooling, Gigamon being one of those tooling, to get the data into a common fabric tooling. And so while, you know, people say that's not possible, I would challenge that and say, talk to your vendors, because I think if you tell them you have Gigamon feeding you the traffic, how are you going to consume it? They go, oh, yeah, that's not a problem. We can live in each of those environments virtually, bring it into a common dashboard, which means a little bit of noise here, a little bit of noise here, becomes really loud in the middle. And so that's what we're trying to do, is give you the ability to train your staff one time, and they can work in any cloud environment. I know that was different than the question, but it is important to stress.
Yeah, the single tool stack across all those environments is huge. I mean, we all know that it's not just that tools are expensive, it's that the people that use those tools are expensive, and they're at a premium. And you go and try and recruit, you know, an observability specialist these days, and it's very, very difficult to do. The fact that from Gigamon, we can pipe all the information into a common tool stack, regardless of where the workloads are situated, I think is a huge upside in alleviating the staff and skill shortage that many of our customer organizations live with. All right, Laurie, anything else we can discuss?
I think that we have time for one more question, and this is a really good one. The traffic reduction capability sounds good. How do I find out how much traffic I can save?
So I think I touched on that earlier on. We have got a suite of tools that can be installed, obviously with your permission, if you're a non-Gigamon customer, or can be used as an extension to Fabric Manager that will let us see exactly what traffic is on the network. And from that, we've got a modeling capability that can say, okay, here's how many duplicate packets we're seeing. Here's what we believe we can reduce as a result of that. Here's how we can use flow mapping, flow slicing, or other techniques to reduce the traffic. We also have a tool that end users can use themselves. This does not plug into the network. It's a web-based tool called the Gigamon Traffic Efficiency Wizard. You can access this through the website. And there, if you've got the basic data about what tools that you're using, how much information is flowing through them, and what your projected growth is, you can actually get sort of a plus minus 10% accurate estimate of how much traffic to tools you could save. See, Jim, I've learned from you over the years. I've learned not to say 80%.
I didn't have to say a word on that one.
Not a word.
I love it.
All right. Okay. All right, Laurie, thank you.
Well, it looks like we've have covered the time we have for our questions. Is there anything else that either of you wanted to cover before we wrap up?
Jim, you want to go first, and then I'll let people know how they can see this for themselves.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that one of the things I would do is there's a couple resources. One is there's an ebook about deep observability. It's short, it's simple. What it'll do is it'll arm you to have these conversations with folks so that you can if you're somebody in the position of leadership, then you can ask your staff about some of these questions. Or if you're like a lot of folks that are actually doing the work, these are questions you can ask of your leadership. What are we doing for these? How are we making it so that we have a cohesive tool across all our stacks? These are the types of things I would encourage you to take a look at the ebooks. Also go to the Gigamon website and take a look through some of the white papers. There's some good stuff reading there and some blogs. And I've got a podcast. I always plug my podcast, Navigating the Cloud Journey. It's non-Gigamon specific. It's by practitioners for practitioners. But I would encourage you, we talk a lot about these kinds of things in the cloud, but more in a open space, non-Gigamon specific. But there's lots of resources for you to learn about what's going on in the cloud. So I would encourage you to keep up on that, because I think you're going to find that observability is the thing for the cloud.
Yeah, that's great, Jim. You've done a large part of my job for me there, so thank you for that. Yeah, if you go to the Gigamon website, as Jim said, there's a ton of really great resources, including Jim's own podcast, which we're all big fans of. But there's also the ability to do things like test drives. So if you want to try some of this stuff for yourself, you've got an ability to do it. We're obviously not providing the whole of the Gigamon suite there for you, but it will give you a flavor of what we can do. And then always, if you want to go deep, get in touch with us. Jim, in many ways, is unique in Gigamon, but in many ways is not unique in Gigamon. We have a number of field CTOs and cloud specialists worldwide who can work with you to understand more about the particular problems you're dealing with on your hybrid networks and how we can help. So please get engaged with us. There's a lot of value we can deliver, and we would really like to work with you to do that. So, Laurie, any last thoughts from you, or otherwise? I think we are done here.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to let viewers know is that they can in the chat or in this interface, they can request a demo for themselves. So we'll get back to you just to make sure that you get attention really quickly.
Yeah, good point. All right, well, thanks everybody for listening. Jim, thanks for joining me. Laurie, thank you for moderating here. And with that, I think we'll say our goodbyes and hope to have the opportunity to meet you all live at some point. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks to Martyn and Jim for putting together a really informative presentation there. And thanks to Laurie for running a great Q&A. Really appreciate your time today and the update on Gigamon and how it helps with visibility. And we've got a poll up here for everybody. If you do want to get additional information from Gigamon, you've got the option here to just let us know here in the poll. You can, of course, select multiple items if you want, for example, a data sheet and a customer case study. And then, of course, the personal demo. That opportunity to talk to somebody from Gigamon, like Lori was mentioning there. So I'll just leave that poll up there for everybody to have an opportunity to review all the options and click on all the ones that you're interested in. And while we do leave that poll up there, we do have one more piece of business. As promised, it's the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card today is Marie Lewis from Washington, D.C. So congratulations to Marie. We will be in touch to get you your card. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close down the poll question. Thank you again to everyone who responded. And this is a last call on the handouts. Remember, there are those 2 PDFs. You've still got a second here to grab either the slide deck or the ebook on deep observability from your handout section. Well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Gigamon for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions today. That concludes this event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.